sponsors. We don't just take their money and run like a butter bar lieutenant lost on a land nav course. Are you finally ready to plant your flag and claim your territory? Maybe it's time to use that VA loan to buy a home. Or hell, maybe you're looking to refinance and put some extra cash in your pocket for more questionable life decisions. Either way, the Veterans Mortgage Source, powered by Canopy Mortgage, has your six. Look, buying a home or refinancing can feel like getting overrun on a bad op. Chaotic, confusing, and full of obstacles that make no damn sense. That's where Corey and his team come in. They're like the QRF of home loans, ready to pull you out of the chaos and guide you to the best program for you. And trust me, they'll answer all your questions. Yeah, even the dumb ones. Whether you're a salty vet or fresh out of barracks still trying to figure out where your TA-50 went. Great service, solid rates, and a team that actually understands the military life. That's why all of us here at Veteran Trash Talk trust them to do right by every veteran and their family. Ready to lock it in? Give Corey a call or shoot him a text at 808-699-7874. That's 808-699-7874. Don't wait. Unless you like overpaying and getting treated like an FNG. The Veterans Mortgage Source is powered by Canopy Mortgage, LLC. All loans are subject to credit and property approval.
All right, what's up, Trash Talkers? What's up, Gruntworks Nation? We are live with your TOC Monkey, your second show of the month, and I am super excited because I get to host a show that we are going to have another expert come on where I don't really have to worry about filling in anything. As what I usually have to do when it gets quiet or it gets stupid, I have to say something. Well, I figures if I'm talking, it's probably going to be the stupid thing. So we get to have an expert on today from the Pacom region, for artists formerly known as Indo Pacom. But I'm turning it over to you, Tanner. It's your show.
Hey, how are y'all doing? It's been a wild week. This week we're gonna cover the current events. I'm gonna try to be quick. Again, I'll probably fail at that again. But there has been some major breaking news. And then we're gonna have our guest on. We're gonna deep dive into Pacom to try to help explain what's really going on with our biggest adversary in the world, which is China. And then some of the COAs and what could happen there. And then at the end, I believe, for those who have been following along, me and Nick are on opposite ends of a political debate surrounding the Take Care of Veterans Act. So I think we'll tackle that. However, and then Nick just got back from Europe. How was that, man?
It was phenomenal. I got to take my family, spend 2 weeks over there. Saw a lot of the awesome historical things in France. And then in Luxembourg, and then went up and I retraced the steps of the 82nd in the Battle of the Bulge, went to all those stops, went to where 2P was, where 2P finally took their final objective in the Battle of the Bulge, where they retreated, blew up some bridges, and then went back on the counteroffensive. And retook the towns, and I got to go to all those monuments, and then ended it with the F1 in Belgium. So that was pretty freaking sweet.
Man, I saw what you said, and I have felt this way a couple different times on different battlefields. But it's just so damn humbling. You know what I mean? When you're there, I remember being like young and like my dad making me walk Pickett's Charge and all that stuff, like at Gettysburg, and then just some other battlefields I've had the privilege to go to. You know, you hear the guys that talk about it when they go to Normandy all the time. Yeah, man, that was awesome because I think me and you talked. Would you say you didn't go to follow the legs? You went and followed. You went. And,
yeah, I mean, I still went to Bastogne because they were airborne then, but you know, let's call it what it is. They're not airborne anymore. So, I mean, they were men back then. I don't know about now. I don't know how they justify themselves now with their ropes and their helicopters.
Oh Lord, yeah. Well, so and I went to Washington D.C. So he was out there following in the footsteps of heroes, and I was chasing down assholes through the halls.
Yeah, that's all you're gonna find there.
So, yeah, bro. We had two different. But DC was beautiful. They were tearing down all the stuff from you know, the 250th. So I didn't go get to what's the word? I didn't get arrested by going and messing with the reflecting pool or anything. They had it blocked off pretty good. But
you were dumping algae in there?
Nah, bro. I didn't have the opportunity. I did walk down and see the monument, and it was gorgeous. And then I try to do this every time. Shout out to our National Guard brothers and sisters that are just they are some of the highest morale I've seen. And salute to y'all for putting up with some of the stuff you're having to put up with out there. Because man, you just seen them, everybody's trying to take pictures with them and stuff, and they've really embraced the community, and I just think it's awesome. And it is cool to see, you know, just everyday citizens getting to see just like Joe out there just doing Joe things, you know what I mean? Like stuff that we're kind of,
for sure,
it's like the biggest clean sweep ever that's taken place. All right, so without further ado, again, I'm going to fail at this, but we're going to try to be quick. Your COCOMs, right? For those uninitiated, if this is your first time, the Department of War splits the globe into different combatant commands, right? And so and I'm going to go through them real quick and try to just give you a real quick swag on what's going on. So in AFRICOM, our access.
You want me to put the screen up or no?
You can, yeah, sure. Okay. I don't know if I'm gonna flip through, but yeah, this is the website. This is talkmonkey.com. I got to flip over here real quick just so I can do it. So if we were to go through, you see the top, they have all the different COCOMs, and then it'll give you a real quick sit update, a live feed of kind of the social media networks that give them, and then the SIGEX there. And then if you really want to nerd out, you can go to the top right corner and check out the task organization. And this is something I try to routinely update. Again, you can see like we talked a lot about Africa Corps on the last episode, right? So with AFRICOM, Sudan's War Crimes Court moves ahead of kind of a ceasefire diplomacy. Now we've seen the State Department kind of interject themselves into this recently. And as we talked about last week, the Saudis were able to buy off 2 high RSF commanders, right? And so there is an active diplomatic effort to bring a ceasefire between the RSF and the SAF. And then I'll jump right to CENTCOM, right? Because this absolutely plays in with that. What we're seeing is the West essentially with the falling on the side of the Saudis in this, which is interesting because obviously the UAE is on the side of the RSF. And what we're seeing is if we can button up what's going on in the Red Sea, then we can have some flexibility on what's going on with Iran. So it's still a key indicator to keep an eye on how the Arab world is responding to the situation in Iran. Obviously in CENTCOM, the war's back on. We're starting to use more targeting language, which I appreciate. Most, CENTCOM's putting out words like degraded, and just the targeting terminology we would use versus the word obliterated, obviously, because clearly their ballistic missile program is not. I'll take this time to say, see you at the final manifest for the soldiers and service members that we lost over the last week, and pray for the speedy recovery of all those that have been evac. Numbers have been fluctuated, but it was significant. But this is the cost of war, y'all. All right, so I'm not going to belabor CENTCOM. This is obviously, I think we're going to do another round of strikes tonight. If you're checking on OSINT and if you look at TOC MONKEY, If you go down there to the bottom tracker with the flight trackers, you will see a huge, and I mean a massive refueling campaign taking over Eastern Europe right now, which is probably going to facilitate. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Bone, definitely Bone in the fight. May even see some B-52s. We'll see. But it looks like we are postured to conduct a major strikes over the next 24 hours. UCOM, more to follow, but Ukraine is doing Ukraine things, right? And we just saw a major announcement. Not going to talk too much about the conflict ongoing, but the president has at least vocally agreed to give them a license to make Patriot missiles. Simultaneously to that, we saw Ukraine, some news about Ukraine being able to manufacture some of their drone boats here stateside. So more to follow. It looks like Zelensky's got some cards. He also had an interesting diplomatic situation where they removed what a lot of people saw as a puppet kind of chief of the army for Ukraine and replaced him with an extremely popular one. And so there was a lot of OSINT traffic about Ukraine being, kind of squashing any domestic pressure that Zelensky had with how he's controlling the army. He kind of put, the guy, as far as Ukraine is concerned, is back in charge as the chief of his army. And then in Pacom, I don't want to talk too much about it because we're going to talk about it a lot. Recent news, China test fired a SLBM with a dummy warhead from a nuclear sub in the South Pacific, and that was on July 6th. That drew formal objections from most of our Pacom allies like Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. And there was also a really interesting, looked like a Coast Guard fight. They were fighting each other with paddles. That's kind of been making the OSINT circles. And then in Northcom, you know what? We're going to leave Northcom alone. There hasn't been too much, right? There was a huge fentanyl.
Wildfires.
Yeah, there's the wildfires going on. Who knows at this point? But we did get one of FBI's most wanted near the Canadian border, so we got that going for us. So that's good. Good job, FBI. He could use some good news. And then Major League Baseball, Dodgers had the best record right now. The Rays are the AL leader. The White Sox, go figure, are actually not doing too bad in the Central. The Rangers got the West, and the Astros are fighting for their lives. How are the Brewers doing, Nick?
Oh, they got the second best record in baseball, just a game back of the Dodgers.
Oh, nice. And then
they're saying that. I mean, again, you got this trade coming up. Someone's going to get Skubal from Detroit.
Okay,
and the people in Milwaukee are begging that we give up 2 of our top 10 prospects for him and just sell out for this year. But watch him go to the Dodgers. I'm telling you, it's just like, and it's just not going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, they can afford them.
4-game series.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah, trust me. And then I'm a golf fan. I don't know if the Open was awesome. We got to see a little bit of everything. You got a little bit of drama. Scotty looked like he might make a run. We got to see DeChambeau kind of melt down, but then be cool about it. Definitely got triggered. And then we saw something, and we saw Rory actually, talk trash on him, which was it happens in golf, but not near as much as most people would think.
And not as public like that.
Not as public, yeah. Called him performative, doing it for YouTube. But and I am empathetic to DeChambeau. He's a big dude, but there was really, come on, man, those were some big steps behind that. Like that was, you can't fee-fi-fo thumb through the through the rough and expect not to get called out, especially in Europe, which historically are a lot more stringent on their rules.
100% he was cheating. 100%.
Well, I do appreciate that Scotty Scheffler came out, who's like probably one of the best humans to ever live, like just righteous man, was like, he's not a cheater, like, which is, DeChambeau needs to buy him a drink after that, because Rory was ready to torch him. And then, Scotty comes in and was like, I've known him. He's not a cheater. Rory was sitting there. I was expecting Rory to name drop the people that were in the clubhouse with him when they were talking shit. But he chose Scotty, as expected, chose to take the higher ground. You know what I mean? So that's really it for my COCOM update, because as promised, I kind of wanted to get through it quick, just so we could actually get to a shut up 25th Infantry here. All right, cool. Sweet. Smoke here is bad. Yeah, man, these forest fires, man, they're global warming, whatever. Not you got to rake the forest. Is that what you're supposed to do? Is that what I'm hearing now? We got to rake.
Well, I mean, it can do some controlled burns, and
True.
like they do in the South, like they do in a lot of other areas, and it's just.
Yeah.
In California out here, when we get a wet season, it's like you watch all this beautiful green, and you're like, that they're going to protect some earthworm, and they won't allow burning, and it's going to be like, well, it's high desert, it's going to burn one of these days, like it's happening.
Like, yeah, dude, that's
okay.
Yeah, Lord. All right, so I think he's in the back. I think he'll be ready. Yeah, so guys, y'all behave in the comments, I guess is what I'm about to say, because candidly, really have no business interviewing this man, right? So tonight we got Dr. Gary Sampson. He just finished his PhD from the Fletcher School, and his dissertation really focused on how China has managed its alliance with North Korea across the nuclear area. So if you're wondering why, right? He also hosts a podcast for War on the Rocks, which is called Marine Pulse. And he started and I don't want to get it wrong, I think it's a Substack, but essentially a blog, which is the Temple of Liberty .substack.com. Make sure you subscribe to that. We'll make sure we add it here into the chat, and then when I do the recap, we'll absolutely have it on there. But one of the things that brought him to my attention was definitely his article a couple of years back, is Pursuing Geopolitical Advantage, China's Search for the Military Allies. Because ultimately now, and I look forward to him telling me I'm wrong, because me and Nick do like to learn here. And we want to bring people on that will absolutely challenge kind of the popular narrative. I often say China doesn't want to beat us. They want to be us, is kind of like how I try to frame it for people. And hopefully we'll get to that question. But Dr. Sampson, thank you so much for coming on the show. And it's my understanding you just got back from Taiwan a couple weeks ago on a personal trip. So how is it going over there? And what should we be thinking about right now?
Well, Tanner, Nick, thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate the invite, and hope we have a nice conversation tonight, and maybe we're able to get some of the stuff in the chat, depending on what comes in.
Yeah.
But yes, I was actually in Taiwan late last month. I would say things are going pretty normal over there. That was the thing I think that was a little bit surprising to me, and some of the trips I made back there. I first lived there starting in 2009. So obviously it's a long time ago, a lot different era then, but I've made a lot of trips back there since then. And what's always struck me is that, there can be a lot of discussion and sort of people getting really excited about what's going on in terms of, aircraft going into the air defense identification zones, and ships and things kind of encroaching into EEZs and things like that over there, crossing center lines of the Taiwan Strait. But it seems over there, when you're there, it's just kind of business as usual. Now, the one exception I will make to that is there was a gap from about 2017 to 2023 where I just was busy with other stuff and I didn't visit. And so I went back in 2023. And what I noticed a big difference that time is that there were so many more just signs on the street for like where the air raid shelters were at. And so to me, that was a big deal, a big difference from before, where people would, I think, kind of minimize the threat from the Chinese and say, okay, it's never going to happen. I think, then, and this was really kind of in the aftermath of things like Speaker of the House at the time, Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in August 2022. And I think things really got more tense after that. Not to mention the Ukraine war and a lot of the things that were happening sort of in 2022 that shifted the mindset, not just in Europe, but also I think, changed the viewpoint of a lot of U.S. allies and partners in East Asia as well, that, hey, that sort of thing could happen over there as well, not just, Russia, Ukraine, and whatever. So anyhow, I think there was a lot of changes that kind of happened around that time. And it just struck me at that time that there were definitely a lot of differences when I went back. And I also just got beyond just the signs for the air raid shelters, in the discussions and things we had with people in government and civil society and things, it just seemed like they were so much more focused on how do you build that resilient society that's going to be able to do the things like you see the Ukrainians doing, continuing to fight and drag this thing out and make it, for the Russians very costly to achieve their objectives. The big question has always been, hey, can Taiwan do something like that? I think it's still a great question. There's a lot of folks who've done good work on trying to figure out how do you quantify something like will to fight. People like Ben Conable, formerly of the Rand Corporation. He's a retired Marine. He runs a research shop of his own now called Battle Research Group. He's done a lot of good work on trying to figure that out, will to fight. And it's something I've been interested in trying to do some research on too. I haven't done much, but I think that's one of the key questions with Taiwan is, what are they going to do if there is an invasion or an attack?
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I can imagine. I guess that's, Nick kind of works in this space too, but there was definitely. I mean, I've done a couple studies when the Rand guys came down to the 82nd, and it was more. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was much more like psychological questions and how do you prepare to train, and those types of things. So that's even the will to fight, especially with the lessons learned out of Ukraine, I think will be key. That's interesting, I guess. So since you just got back, I guess I want to ask you, in your opinion, what is the most significant development we've seen in Pacom? Not just necessarily, limited to China or Taiwan, but just over the last 90 days or the last quarter. What's the most significant thing that's happened inside the AO?
Well, you actually mentioned it in your intro when you talked about the submarine launched ballistic missile that China had done back on July 6th. I think that probably is the number one event that I would point out over the past 90 days or so in the region. And the reason for that is this is a capability they've never really shown before. They've only done really two previous sort of long-range nuclear-capable missile tests. One was in 2024, which was a ICBM, a land-based missile that they fired from Hainan Island, which is in the southern part of southern part of China near South China Sea. So it was from land. It went out into the Pacific, quite a long distance, I think over 10 or 11,000 kilometers. That was a big deal because, we hadn't seen anything like that in more than, this was 1980 was the last time before that they had done a similar type of test. And they've never done one from a submarine before. And so to me, it sends the signal of they're not only serious about building out the land-based portion of their nuclear deterrent, which we've seen in the past 6 or 7 years, really in the open source, with a lot of new silo-based missiles going in Western China. They've always been developing a lot of mobile land-based missiles as well, nuclear and conventional. But this, starting in about 2019 or so, was the first time we really saw them to really go all in and building ICBM silos. And then now with this missile test, and they weren't from the submarine earlier this month, they were very opaque about the platform it launched from. I think we have a pretty good idea of what it probably was. Type 94 Jin class submarine. Probably, we don't know that for sure in the open source. And then also the missile, they didn't say what that was either. There's a couple of different types of missiles that it could be JL2 or JL3. But the difference is important because the JL2's range, if it was a JL2, the range of that missile is around the length of the actual observed missile shot on July 6th, which was around 7,300 kilometers. If it's the more advanced JL3, that's a missile that people suspect can probably reach all the way to continental United States. So we don't know which one it was. It would be nice to find out, but either way, this is a new capability that we haven't seen China show off before. And it's really important in terms of nuclear deterrent. If they have something that's much more longer range and capable, it's been a very weak part of their nuclear capability for a long time. They've had submarine-based ballistic missiles for a long time, but they've been very short-ranged, and most of their submarines have been very loud, so very detectable, and so it wasn't really something that we needed to worry that much about. With a longer-range missile like this, and probably coming from a submarine that's much quieter and able to stay submerged longer, it really increases their ability to make nuclear threats that are credible. And it's just,
So to bring,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick. I don't know. Yeah, so do they have essentially, it seems like the replicate, I mean, in the Western frame, it's like the triad is getting better, right? For China is kind of how I was over here taking notes now. Like, so, Nick, do you have some?
I was gonna go into kind of lead into your second question that you had written down, because I was just to throw my 2 cents in there. Like, I really nerded out on the Cold War and the Sino-Soviet split back in my college days, and which was when I was in the Army, and I was one of those weird infantry guys that like to read books and stuff like that. So going through all that. And then, you think you're some kind of expert based on your surroundings and who you're talking to about China. But like Tanner said, China wants to be us in the beginning. I've always seen it like we were almost always like allies with China. And then when I got stationed in Hawaii, they were in our 2016 RIM pack. Like, they participated in it. And then they were invited in 2018 and then got told no because of their actions, their posture with Taiwan. So, Tanner, if you want to go into that second question, that's kind of like, at what point did we finally transition to like, hey, we're not really building up China anymore, which kudos to them. They've exploded. If you look at from 1950 until now, in relative short history, they have become massive, like a massive superpower. So, Tanner, you want to lead into that one?
Yeah, I think the way to especially for our audience, I think there's a lot of confusion on, really what China's most likely course of action would be with Taiwan, and then versus what their most like deadly course of action would be, right? And so really, what are there just some decision points we should be looking for that would indicate that? And if they do go most deadly and we actually see like a cross-strait amphibious assault, how does this look? Because I struggled to like frame what this actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great question. So I think, the most likely thing is it basically just continues to look kind of how it does now, where you have sustained coercion across a whole different types of, from the exercises that they do routinely. They have ships, the Chinese PLA, around the totality of the island of Taiwan. They have them out on the Pacific side. They have them in the Strait. They have them to north to south. It just depends on how many at any given day, right? And so not that long ago, maybe last year, a couple of years ago, the Indo Pacom commander, he characterized it as, it's no longer just an exercise, it's a rehearsal. And I think that's probably right. Yeah. They basically gotten to the point where they're able to have enough maritime vessels of not only the gray hulls of the PLA Navy, but also the other types of vessels they use to put pressure on Taiwan and other, like South China Sea claimants and things like that, with their Coast Guard vessels, with their maritime militia, all that stuff. It's not just those destroyers and frigates and all those things. It's the whole across the waterfront of those different types. But so those are out there. We obviously have every day there's X number of incursions by PLA aircraft, crossing the center line, et cetera, making the Taiwan Air Force have to scramble their jets and get up there and really testing the readiness, I think, of the equipment on the Taiwan Armed Forces side. And I think that's by design in a certain respect. It's similar to what they had done with a lot of close flights into the waters around the Southwest Islands of Japan and Okinawa and some kind of those areas where it would put a lot of stress on the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, 10, 15 years ago. I think it probably continues now, but I think that in comparison that the Japan, Air Self-Defense Force is going to be able to absorb that operational stress a lot more better. It's larger, more well-funded, et cetera. Whereas the Taiwan Air Force is smaller and they're going to have a harder time getting replacement parts and all that sort of thing. And so I think it can be much greater leverage for China against Taiwan in that respect. But you'll continue to see things like information operations, the economic pressure, this maritime law enforcement patrols, Coast Guard, starting to do things like inspections of commercial shipping, and this stuff is going on currently as we speak, where they're trying to push the limits of, what other countries will do in terms of their interactions with Taiwan, if they will sort of knuckle under and start doing these things that China's asking them to do in terms of, stopping to be inspected or that sort of thing. That almost seems like a pseudo, quarantine in the making if they just decide they want to enforce it more restrictively. And so they want to, change normal behavior without presenting Washington or others an obvious opening point to take a real action. It's basically the classic salami slicing approach that they've perfected in a lot of different places: East China Sea, South China Sea, the Himalayan sort of frontier with India, whatever. Like all these different sort of disputed areas and territories. This is sort of the playbook that China uses, and so they've got years and years and decades of experience sort of, figuring out what works there and how far they can push the boundary before, it's too much for Taiwan, or, you get allies and partners to start, stepping back or whatever. So I would describe that sort of as the most likely, is that just continues to happen, and again, continues to sort of, ebb and flow a little bit in relationship with, if there's something, a big geopolitical event that, sort of ticks off Beijing, like, a visit of a U.S. official or something like that to Taiwan. I think I saw recently that some U.S. senators were there for some meetings or conference or something, and those things continue to happen. They typically don't make the same huge splash that the Nancy Pelosi visit in 2022 did, but that was sort of, I think, what opened the door towards this more ramping up of steady coercive pressure across all these different ways against Taiwan. So I think that will just continue. I don't think, it's not costly for China to do that. And they're also able to put pressure on, Taiwan's remaining few, I think maybe 11 or so, like official diplomatic partners. But even beyond that, the unofficial ones, like I think just this past week or the week before, they were able to put some pressure on the government in Papua New Guinea, like, okay, well, big deal, whatever. But basically, it's one of the countries that didn't have official relations with Taiwan. Taiwan had a representative office there. I think they still do. But basically, the message came out where Beijing had offered some sort of incentive to the Papua New Guinea government, or pressure or whatever. I don't know the details of that. But basically, the result was they said, Taiwan, you have to close your representative office, in this country. Wow. And so we don't see a lot of that sort of pressure. We see more of the sort of dollar diplomacy of, Beijing trying to pick off the official like countries or those 11, 12 different entities that have formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan still. But that hasn't happened a lot recently. It happened more maybe 10 years ago or so, when the DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, first came to power after Ma Ying-jeou's presidency. But anyhow, so you continue to see this pressure across a lot of different ways. Diplomacy is part of it as well, and just, I think, trying to sort of make Taiwan become sort of radioactive in the eyes of like the international community. I think with COVID, there was a lot of things that Taiwan was doing right, in terms of trying to manage that. And they were trying to, I think, share some of that with international bodies that had to do with health and stuff like that. But it was something that they kind of got boxed out of because of China. And so that's just one example of another thing that you think sort of this medical area, and vaccinations, whatever, we might be able to sort of work with them. But even for that, China tries to make it not happen. So
I think you brought up a good
I guess it's long answer of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, before we get to most deadly, when you said rehearsal, and I'm switching Pacoms on you, but one of the interesting case study for this, and I'd love your analysis on it. Like when their mobilization happens, right? So like the Yom Kippur War or the October War, depending on who you read, like what Egypt did repeatedly was do these massive kind of mobilization exercises and essentially lulled Israel into thinking, oh, this is just another mobilization exercise. And then they put 5 divisions across the Suez in in an afternoon. And so I think that that's probably a pretty solid. It makes sense to me to call it a rehearsal for, the actual thing, and then all the posturing that comes along with that, which I think you identified. Yeah, it's definitely a multi-domain, aggressive posture that they're taking, whether across all the elements of dying, like completely. And then I know Nick, like that, especially with Rimpack. Like, were you there, Nick, for Rimpack in 2016, or were you
Yes,
still
I was.
RIing it up?
No, I was there. I was in there for 2016. That's when I was like, when you started hearing a lot of the, what if we go to war with China? I'm like, well, we're doing a joint operation with them right now. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And then 2018, so it's kind of always kind of like weird to me that like what is going on over there.
Yeah, so they're kind of slow. So so I understand, it's the coercion, slow roll. See, I call Iran like habitual line steppers. I think China has mastered the craft of staying below the threshold, kind of across all the spectrums. And that, like, Papua New Guinea, that's kind of, I don't want to say it's funny because it's not, but it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, they will absolutely take the low hanging fruit that they can take to isolate them. And so let's say hypothetically, they do decide, right, that they're going. What is the most deadly course of action look like for the Taiwan crisis, kind of?
I think they've spent, the Chinese PLA has spent decades now basically building up a precision rocket force, a lot of conventional stuff, some nuclear, but in the numbers that they really could saturate, I think pretty much probably every important target in Taiwan. And we know, I think from watching the Iran war, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work, but I do think it would make life in Taiwan pretty miserable. And
Right.
There's always a chance too that a decapitation strike could work, especially. One of the things I thought of when the Venezuela raid happened back in January is like, this is exactly what China wishes it could do, to sweep into Taiwan and basically take their senior political leaders off the board. And I don't think they have that level of soft capability that we do that allowed that to happen. But I do think that's something that would be very appealing to them. So I think a combination of those sort of things that really could change the game in the favor of China in terms of degrading capability. They could do some type of soft enabled raid. I do think there's a fair amount of sort of sleeper cells and things like that of Chinese agents, nationals, whatever, inside of Taiwan. They have had a lot of counterintelligence issues there with their government and their military for a long time. It's nothing new, but I think sometimes people forget that that's one of the weaknesses or hindrances of partnering.
Well, what's China's business standing in Taiwan? Do they have companies there? Because you brought up like Venezuela, where we go out and take out Maduro, but like we're able to put a $1 trillion company in there to start going after oil and kind of like, hey, this is what we're doing. You're gonna get a lot of money from this. Does China have anything like that going on in Taiwan?
I can't say that they don't have anything. I do think it's pretty restricted if they do. I don't think there's any large, conglomerates or anything like that of Chinese ownership in Taiwan. The other way around is not true. There actually are large Taiwanese companies operating inside of China, including Foxconn, which is one of the main builders of personal electronics like iPhones and things like that. And so you could point to that and say, hey, these important big Taiwanese businesses that are in China could be sort of held hostage, in some sort of situation. I think that's very viable.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think also, if you want to talk about businesses and things like that, we should also mention sort of this quote unquote silicon shield that some people talk about with Taiwan in terms of TSMC and like the cutting edge chips and things that they make there. Some people surmise that China might try to kind of get around all the export controls and things like that and try to seize maybe some of these facilities of the cutting edge chip manufacturing in Taiwan. I'm skeptical. I mean, I think there's probably been a lot of thought put into like sort of spiking the guns, so to speak, when it comes to those things. I don't think they would allow that sort of technology that would enable China to sort of just be up for grabs. I think those facilities would probably be destroyed before China could seize them. But I could be wrong. Who knows? And those could be the type of thing that really entices a move if for some reason all the export controls and things that we're trying to do here in this country to keep cutting edge chips and that sort of technology from getting to China. If that's really effective, then maybe they want to think about some way they could sort of get it to indigenously, if they talk about Taiwan being part of China and that sort of thing, and say, okay, we're going to take control of this rogue province and get the technology they have and use it for the motherland.
Yeah, one of the things that when me and my friends sit around and nerd out about this stuff, and and without going too deep, I was like, well, dude, like inside the most deadly, they're like, well, what does America do? I was like, well, I don't know what we do like holistically, but I would expect that certain capabilities that we'd have would be absolutely focused on going to evacuate some key scientists and key personalities and knowledge out of Taiwan to ensure their safety, whether that happened on the commercial side and or like on the whether or it's literally CAG going to grab like whatever particular scientist to make sure he doesn't fall in the hands, or her. I want to make sure I'm being fair there. And so as far as like roll on, roll off, like their ferries that they have, like there's been a lot in the ocean sphere, and really in just like we'll call like the Monday morning quarterback chair analysis, like me and Nick tend to give, of is it realistic that we see that type of invasion, like like PLA proper, rolling down? Because I always think about the terrain in Taiwan, which I think a lot of people discount, right? Like we're not talking like an open field here. There's some rugged mountainous terrain. And so there is, to me, aspects of when you talk about the will to fight and things like that, that there is, saying they survived the first 72 hours inside the most deadly course of action. There is, to me, that there is some terrain that favors the Taiwanese. And just any thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I liked how you brought up the sort of the geography of Taiwan. Like if you've never been there, it's easy to, it's just a flat thing on the map. Well, it couldn't be further from the truth if you go there. No. Actually, the tallest mountain in East Asia, not South Asia, obviously that's Mount Everest, but East Asia is actually in Taiwan, Jade Mountain. It's 14,000 some feet. So it's taller than Mount Fuji. It's taller than, whatever. So like that's something I think a lot of folks don't appreciate about Taiwan. And the middle of the island is a large mountain range. And so I think if you think about sort of some of the factors that have historically been important for populations that are able to like fight an insurgency, right? Think about mountains and all that sort of thing. They've got it. Like, so if they have will to fight, it's a different story and whatever. If they have resilience, then I think they also have some good resources when it comes to their geography. And also I think it's actually a pretty defensible island because there aren't a ton of good landing beaches there. So I think there's a lot they can do to defend themselves, and they wouldn't. I think they wouldn't have to do it on their own. I'm not going to say the U.S. is going to get involved, whatever, but like there'd be a lot of people trying to help them, I think.
Yeah. So speaking of allies, go ahead, Nick. My bad.
Yeah, I want to do like my best reporter question where I make a statement in the question. When you're to do it that way. But for the Gruntworks audience, I've correct me if I'm wrong on this theory, but I look at China as the quiet guy in the bar with everything else going on. China's the quiet guy in the bar with cauliflower, right? You just waiting for just don't mess with him, right? Because if he gets out of that bar seat, like it's going to be a problem. But when they're watching Russia do whatever they're doing, when they're watching the United States doing what they're doing in Iran, all over the world, and they're just sitting here acquiring land. And like you said, they're sitting here just posturing in other countries to put pressure on Taiwan, and nobody's paying any attention to it because they're just being quiet. What's your theory on that? And then the second part of that is before we start promoting your podcast and other things, what about you? What got you into studying this? What got you into being passionate about this?
Yeah, great. No, I think, thanks, Nick. I think that's a great way to think about it, actually. Sort of that quiet guy in the corner that's like burly, and you're like, I don't want to take a crack at that. I hope they just stay over there and be calm. It's a little bit more historical, I guess, but before the current era, the whole thing about China was, they're trying to hide their capabilities and bide their time. I think they actually still are. A lot of folks now, talking about the Davidson window, 2027, they're going to invade. I just don't believe that. I think they have. I've talked about it a lot already. It's just all the things they sort of can continue to do with very little to no cost to themselves to put pressure on Taiwan and continue to marginalize them and isolate them, and other international sort of disputed territories and things that they. So I think if it really comes down to starting to try to take Taiwan by force, that's playing into not their playbook, but maybe ours.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to stop something like that, right? But and of course, I'm not privy to any PRC war plans. Of course, Taiwan is part of their thing. I think if you talk about roll-off vessels and things like that, I remember last year there was a report that came out of the China Maritime Studies Institute at U.S. Naval War College. They put out a report, and I think it had appeared other places, kind of in the media around the same time. But they had this new thing, so not a roll-on, roll-off. People have been talking about those for a while, but this thing called a water bridge, basically, Shuiqiao, and it looked like basically just a pier that you could take wherever you need to man stuff and go put it there. And so I think we see these periodic instances of their military sort of innovating, how can we get across the strait? How can we do this incredibly difficult military task that nobody's ever done? There's a professor at the National Intelligence College, Jay McVan. He had a piece in War on the Rocks maybe recently. It's called, I think, The Three Nevers. And it talks about all the things that, the three things that China would have to be able to accomplish to Taiwan by force. And basically there are three of the hardest things. Nobody's ever done these things together. And so it's basically pessimistic about their capability to do it. I agree with that a little bit, but I don't think we should count them out, because this historic mission to, in their view, reunify Taiwan with China is one of the biggest missions of their nation, and has been basically since it was created in 1949. So I think, to totally dismiss and say, oh, it's too hard, they can't do it, they won't do it, they still might, even though, these things are hard and they'll be costly and they may not work, but I don't think that that's what they want to do anytime soon.
Yeah.
Not next
Pride's
year,
a thing.
probably not in 5 years from now.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd hit Iran, but Trump wanted to do it, so we're here with the
sometimes
here we are.
Sometimes that's all it takes. But if I could respond to your question briefly, I don't know how much time we have left, but about how I got involved.
We're good, Dr. Sampson. He is the host, but I got to ask, just because I wanted to stay a little bit Pacom, what does North Korea do, and how does North Korea factor into how should the West factor in North Korea into the calculus, and what do they do? Whether it's the most likely or most deadly, because I feel like they're gonna North Korea. I don't want to say they have a vote, but they definitely have influence here.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I think, as you mentioned in the opening, when I wrote my dissertation at the Fletcher School at Tufts University, it was focused on the alliance relationship between China and North Korea, focused on the post-Cold War period, so starting 1991 to 2021, so a 30-year period. And the real focus was on the the nuclear relationship between the two countries in terms of North Korea developing this nuclear weapons capability while still, being an ally, actual formal treaty ally of China. And so they still are that. Just recently, I think last year, I forget the exact chronology, but North Korea also signed a formal defense treaty with Russia, which was new. They used to have one with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Once the Soviet Union collapsed, that went away. And so then China was sort of the only game in town for North Korea for a long time. They didn't have any other allies or that sort of thing. China's been their ally since 1961. It still continues. Actually, just recently, in the past month or two, you've seen a lot of activity related to that alliance relationship, that treaty. You saw Xi Jinping travel to North Korea for a state visit there, where they were specifically talking about the 65th anniversary of the treaty. And then following on to that, you've seen a lot more activities by other high political military people from China or North Korea kind of going back and forth and sort of solidifying that relationship. And so I'm saying that just to say that I don't think North Korea will stay on the sidelines if this sort of cross-strait thing happens. It's too important to China to sort of, just keep that on the bench. So I think at the very least you would see sort of some simultaneity of, we talk about the provocations and things that North Korea does with their missile launches. And we haven't seen a nuclear test since 2017, but, they could probably do it any time. So those sort of things, I think, would definitely be on the table for, keeping the U.S. and its allies from being able to focus on countering China crossing the strait. I think that we would also need to be able to be ready for the sort of that simultaneity question of, now, do I think that North Korea is going to invade South Korea kind of on a trigger there? I don't think so. What I think they would do is, fire some missiles, maybe shell an island, the sort of things we've seen before that can be casualty producing, but still are sort of below the threshold of where
not decisively engaged,
South Korea
basically,
or United States are ready to respond in kind.
Okay.
And that would take a lot of, I think, focus off of what's happening further south in the Taiwan Strait. So I think that is definitely, and I know folks are thinking about this, military planners, the simultaneity question, but I think because of sort of the recent closer alliance management activities that we've seen from Beijing vis-a-vis Pyongyang just in the past couple of months, I think that's much more realistic now even than it was a year ago.
I appreciate that, because my brain definitely always went to, okay, if they invade, then Seoul's going to have a problem, right? North Korea is coming if China actually pulls the trigger. But I appreciate that analysis, because now I got to go nerd out about that. But and Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off. So please, absolutely, how did you get into all this, sir?
You got as much time as you want too. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
All right. Yeah. So I don't want to go back, way back, but anyhow, it's basically I got assigned to Okinawa, Japan, as a very young enlisted Marine. I deployed there on the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit in 1996, and it's one of those things where I hadn't been overseas before. I basically had just lived my life in the United States up to that point, and so then I joined the Marines, and I got stationed in Hawaii, like Nick, and then deployed from there to Japan. And being in Japan had just a really big impact on me. I really liked the culture and the language and all those sort of things. And so when I decided to get out of the Marine Corps a few years later, go back to college, I had to do foreign language. I said, I want to do Japanese. So I did that, and 9/11 attacks happened, and I said, okay, I'm going back in the Marine Corps. I gotta get back in the fight and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I wanted to try to find a way to get back to East Asia to sort of focus on the area. I thought it would be focused on Japan, to be honest. That was my interest from earlier. But the Marine Corps had different ideas for me, and they said, we want to send you to this graduate school program in Taiwan. And that's really kind of where it took root. I mean, I still focus on sort of the region writ large, and a lot of the research that I do. I do still do things related to Japan, the Koreas, obviously, Taiwan, China. All this stuff is still very interesting to me. But it all kind of goes back to that first overseas assignment as a Lance Corporal.
Okay. And then what was the motivation to start your most recent Substack project?
Sure, yeah. So as I was getting ready to retire from the Marine Corps last year, I just had some things on my mind. I was a little bit concerned about sort of the civic health of our country. And, some of these things you can't write about so freely when you're an active duty serving officer. So, I had some ideas, thoughts, opinions, and I wanted to get them out. And so I think a lot of it was to sort of maybe the cathartic, okay, I'm retired now. I can now talk about civil military relations. I have an opinion that I've always had, but you can't say it basically, you got to toe the party line, et cetera. And so that was a lot of it, of just let's talk about some of the issues and problems we're having in this country. I can talk about politics now. I haven't really done it on the Substack religion, but it's really a lot about those things, the civic health, some things in civil military relations, some things of travel, and also books and learning, and it kind of relates to the graduate study that I've done and all that sort of thing. So it's like a lot of things, but it also, I think, really the main spine of it is sort of that civic health piece, and how do we be good citizens, right, of this country? Because we all serve in the military and that sort of thing, but the sort of the obligation to, I think, be an active citizen and continue to sort of serve the country in that respect continues. And so it's really kind of focused on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of our favorite guests on the Trash Talk Hour, JC Glick, talks about that, the CEO of the Commit Foundation. And he's always like, if you want to still serve, he's like, serving your community is still serving your country. Like, be an active member.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man. Well,
and so it's about that, really.
That's awesome. Doctor, I can't tell you how honored I was that you came on. I actually got one more question for you. Did either of you, and this might be personal, I guess you don't have to answer. Did either of your parents graduate college?
Yeah, my father did. I think he was the first one in his family to graduate from college.
Are you the first one to get a PhD kind of in your?
Yeah, nobody else has taken such a liking to graduate school as I did.
Yeah, my mom was the first. And then my dad I think my dad got an associate's degree. I remember watching him study for it when he was working at the steel mill. And I think this is in your wheelhouse, Nick, we'll go along. Because me and Nick ranted about this a couple weeks ago, and it is a hot button issue as we do this, and feel free to discuss. You are a product of a system, basically. I mean, right? The Marines sent you to Taiwan to go to a graduate program. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
And so, any thoughts on what you're seeing, or if you don't want to comment in on it, please don't feel obligated, because I did, but what we're seeing as far as the senior service colleges and the fellowship programs and just kind of I don't know if you've been called a Marxist on Twitter lately. I have, but just and my, what I say that because Nick had my back, right? Because he knows me, but I'm interested to see your thoughts on what the current debate is about academia and senior leadership, right?
We're worried about winning wars, not reading books.
Any thoughts you have? I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to do justice to. I wrote a piece actually on Temple of Liberty. If you look back in the archives, I think it's in maybe mid-February or so of this year. I had made a trip up to Boston to Tufts to attend an event up there, and around that time is when they came out, I think, kind of with the first tranche of sort of hey, we're cutting ties with University XYZ. I think it was Harvard at the time, but I think the writing was on the wall, hey, other places like Tufts and others will sort of be next, and eventually they were. And so I wrote a piece that I tried to place with the Boston Globe. They didn't take it, but so I ended up putting it up on my Substack. But basically, I mean, I did a fellowship at Fletcher. I mean, that's how I got the chance to do the PhD there. Is going there as a military fellow, commandant of the Marine Corps fellow, the Marine Corps. board selected, whatever, to go do that. They sent one person, the year that I went, and it was me. And I was so grateful for that chance to go there and really sort of, dig into that full-time study. And there were things I was exposed to there that were, weird, like, some of the just things that it would be hard to imagine that you would see as like if you just stayed kind of this normal track of a military officer and go to the command and staff college, war college, etc. But I think that actually is good for our officers to go out and be exposed to some of these ideas. It doesn't mean you have to agree or take them on board yourself, but you should be able at least to, an idea is not going to kill us out there. I think it actually will help us sort of become stronger to, if you don't agree with it, that's fine, but let's talk about it. Yeah. And a lot of the folks there on campuses, like the one there in Medford, Massachusetts, I went to, a lot of folks had never met a military officer, Marine Corps officer, or whatever. And so it's this great two-way learning street of, folks who don't get a lot of time around the military. Hey, now you have handful of mid-grade military officers in your classes, and guess what? They're going to be able to add to sort of the discussions about diplomacy and war and use of force and all these different things from their 15, 20 years of experience that they've been doing this in the military, all these deployments and everything else. And the other thing about a school like the Fletcher School and the other professional schools of international affairs that are out there, they have a ton of international students who come to them. I think at Fletcher, it was something like 40% of the student body was, from overseas. And so to me, that felt actually pretty similar to when I was a grad student in Taiwan. Obviously, I was one of the international students there, but you look around the classrooms and you have folks from all over the world there. It's not just, the really smart folks from the United States. It's from all over. And that's one of the great things about it too, is that those relationships that you build there, you can continue those on into future military assignments or State Department or 100 different things where that can be valuable. So if you want to go back and read the the short,
no, absolutely,
short
I definitely will. And my thing, and I think Nick would agree with me on this part, is like, so I go to Liberty, right? I'm at one of the approved schools. Like my PhD program is through Liberty University, and what I've been, as a part of this debate, the part that has frustrated me is the fact that one of the things that sucked is when I got hurt, like I was really wanting to go, I had a really pipe hitter as a brigade commander, and I won't say his name because I don't want to get him in trouble, but he wanted me to go to, he was ready, willing, and able. And then in his follow-on job, he would have probably been able to make it happen for me to go to Sam's. And I remember being really grateful for that. Just like, for one, that this stellar leader was willing to kind of support that dream of mine, or not. It wasn't really a dream, but like would put his name on the line to help further my career and understanding. But the part that's frustrated me the most about this is, like, I'm a poor kid from Port Arthur, Texas. And it's like, do you think that our nation's best are going to lose the ability to critically think, right? We're not sending 18-year-olds to these fellowships. We're sending guys who have fought all of GWAT, who have an understanding of, cultures, at least at a cursory level. And they lack so little character and backbone that they will immediately become screaming communist Marxists if they're exposed to a different idea. Nick's seen me get pretty pissed about this a couple of times, but where he is also my litmus check, right? Because Nick absolutely was like, is not anti-intellectual, right? Even though he would agree with a lot of that, the particular crowd where I'm frustrated with. That me and that crowd would probably agree on a lot of stuff, but this is kind of where I've held the line. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, you won't find somebody that believes, me and Nick say we preach the gospel of violence of action. Like, we like to nerd out about stuff like that. But, we all went, where we went, whether, Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever you at. And we, we did what we were asked to do. And so I truly appreciate, kind of your story on that. And then Nick, if you got some thoughts, because I know you over there cook, I see you furiously like he's got that itch, like I can tell, like
Yeah, it does frustrate me, but I want to give a military broadcast radio shout out on Twitter. They picked this up, so
Hell
they
yeah.
have a
Thanks,
pretty
guys.
big
Good
following.
looking out.
So those of you that are just coming on now, if you want to rewatch a lot of it, we have Dr. Sampson on, expert in the Pacom region, and just a really, really awesome, breakdown of what's going on in, China, Taiwan, or the whole region. So if you want to rewind and watch that, or wait for the audio to come out later on the podcast platforms. But now we're kind of in the, I like Tanner's segue into that, and which we'll get into later about the rant, where I obviously despise group thinking. Like, I despise it with all of my loins. And we're seeing a lot of that now, where if you're either with us, you're against us. Well, like Tanner said, if I go to the war college, all right, I'm probably going to be with all the same people with the same pedigree as me, and we're talking about the same thing. Now, you send me somewhere else where I'm listening to someone from a different country talk about how they do things and how they view things, and then maybe someday I'm in that country as a colonel. Maybe I have a little bit of knowledge on how those people think and how they view us. Like,
great point.
I
might be helpful.
Might be helpful. One of my favorite leaders that I studied was General Patton, and so that's one of the stops I had to make, in Luxembourg, to go see his grave. But I like when you watch the movie Patton, and there's parts of it in the book where one of the younger commanders in the German army was saying that Patton's a romantic. He's going to do this. And the field grade officer didn't listen to him, and that's exactly what Patton did. It's because he went out and learned about who this guy is. But the people that Tanner's talking about, if they would have saw him reading a book by Patton, he would have been, oh, he's this guy's an American sympathizer, So oh my gosh, no, he's just learning his enemy, bro. So
it's important, man.
Yeah.
Look, Dr. Sampson, I truly appreciate you coming on. And to your peers and comrades, see, there are grunt podcasts out there that will absolutely tackle serious issues with you, and we want to have those serious discussions. We absolutely want, because I think there's a thirst for non partisan bait click stuff, and so that's what we try to do here on Talk Monkey, is basically learn together. And then and if you disagree with Dr. Sampson, we'll do the recap episode. Please comment, tag him on social media, check out his stack, and I'm definitely going to go read the article. Definitely read his article about China and North Korea. It'll help you frame the problem, right? Because a lot of you mid-level leaders, I talked to I was on Bragg today, and they were talking about the podcast and everything. And I was like, well, make sure you actually go look at the stuff we talk about, right? Don't just take my word for it, because, I'm just like y'all, man. So you might see it different. So, and we're never scared to have a debate. We might get painted as absolutionists. We are not. We are willing to have our minds changed. And again, Dr. Sampson, thank you for coming on. Any parting shots?
Yeah. How do people find what Tanner's talking about with your stacks in
I will drop it in the chat,
okay.
Nick. I got it. Actually, that's a good idea. I'm failing my part. Let me copy and paste it over.
Either that, or you can go to my personal website, www.GaryJ.Sampson.
Drop it. Tell them what it is.
www.Gary.
Nice.
Gary J. Sampson.
Sweet analysis.
Yep.
He's putting it in the chat now, and then I'll get your Substack in there.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hold
I appreciate
on,
it.
all you crazy.
Good conversation.
Absolutely, Dr. Sampson.
Oh, thank you, sir. Again, we'll love to have you back. And if something pops off, we'll lie. If China, invades Taiwan tomorrow, we're gonna go live, and we'll just tell you how wrong you were. Right? and we'll be like, what happened?
I'm gonna start paying attention to some of the little the little satellite countries around there and see what China's doing with how they're.
If you'd have told me we were going to talk about Papua New Guinea today, I didn't see that one coming.
You got to watch that.
That was.
What is that movie?
Got to see them guys.
it's like the closer you look, the more you won't find, the more you won't see. Like, so
Yeah, true.
we're just fixated on Taiwan. What the
Sweet.
hell else are they doing? I'm gonna go find out what else they're doing. So yeah.
Well, so
really
you have a
appreciate
good
it.
one. We'll make sure everybody gets it, and we'll put it in the recap. Thank you so much for joining us. Hell yeah. And then for those that are sticking around, listen to me yell. Well, we're not going to yell. We're going to discuss. So like Nick was in Europe, right, this week. And then what ended up taking place is while Nick was in Europe, and I felt bad for him because ultimately he missed out on what would have been some of his best trolling he could have done, right? Like, I understand you were over there.
I was
and you
trying.
couldn't
I was
dedicate
trying.
the time. I know, but you were doing good things, dude. And like, you're with the family, right? The kids are there. You're having this great time. So I was sitting there in DC thinking like, oh man, my man's missing out on like, because it got brutal. Like, there was live press conferences on both sides. There was crazy. It was just shenanigans all the way around. So to recap, for those that don't understand what took place, there was the first Major Richard Starr Act was coming, right? Where there was at that time 4 signatures away from the discharge petition. Okay, great. So all the concurrent recipient bubbas were super excited. And then Mike Bost comes out with the Take Care of Veterans Act, which is an omnibus bill where they lumped 60 of them together. And inside of that, which is what we're going to kind of, I'm going to take a principled stance. Nick's going to argue with me about it. But they put it in there and they said, essentially it went after sleep apnea and tinnitus as a pay for. I do not want to get into big parliamentary rules here with y'all, but essentially they can assign rules that say to, the budgetary rules that they have basically mean that if you're going to get a bill across the finish line, you have to show the offset. Now, I understand that can be confusing because not every piece of legislation is susceptible to that. And that's part of what this argument is really about. But they found this and this is where it gets wonky because the Secretary Collins has not coughed up the answer to this yet. He's been ducking the shit out of this question. Is this rule change or ratings change, I should say, going to happen over sleep apnea and tinnitus? And if it was, then that money would go back to the Treasury Department versus staying in the VA. And then, so that's what he was using. I think it ended up being like 59 billion or something like that. That cost would then pay for, right, by the Senate or by the rules, the Take Care of Veterans Act. The VFW put out a cartoon. It was not received well by the Republican Party. They said that, a lot of wonky stuff happened, guys. And I don't want to rehash all of that. But this fast forwards, it was actually Bo's probably biggest mistake going after the VFW's VA accreditation because it made the issue about something else, right? If we're just talking politics, like inside the Beltway, he had probably a win, and then he went, he got triggered, right? Never get triggered.
Yep.
And he wrote a memo, and his staff did him no favors because inside that memo, he highlighted individual members of the VFW. And it made the conversation about something else. And shout out to Grunt Style because they've sold a shit ton of shirts off of this thing. And mine got here today. I almost wore it, but it's out in the mailbox.
Oh man.
So the VFW puts out the call. Nick's on a plane to Europe, and I'm on my way to Washington D.C. and we walk the halls of Congress for about 4 days. And then Congress can't get its shit together and they push off the TCFA vote. And here we are still debating what's going to happen. Is that a good recap? Is that a fair recap? I'm not trying to put any bias on it. No,
that's a pretty fair recap. Yeah, I did get a little lucky being in Europe because I fell in love with the Italian Chianti, right? Like, and I was drinking about a bottle of that a night. And then with the time difference, I was able to put comments on that nobody was awake for in America.
Yeah.
So then I got to see the aftermath of the comment you know, I was waking up. I used to do that when I was in Hawaii before I go do PT. I would post something on Facebook, go do PT, and then the rest of America would wake up or already been there. They get off of work and see it and go nuts. And I was like,
all hell
okay,
breaks
perfect.
loose. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just sitting there. I'm running 5 miles, not even paying attention to what they're saying. But yeah, again, you can't trust anybody from Illinois. Doesn't matter what political party they're from. And there is a little joke in that, but it is Illinois. All right.
Yeah.
The three hardest states to live in are Illinois, California, and New York. Right. They're just all messed up, and everybody's leaving those states. You're tainted. Okay. When you're there. I don't feel too bad. I don't feel bad at all for the people he called out in his stupid rant about the cartoon, because that is exactly what those people wanted. So, and don't sell yourself short on that shit. None of those people are real freedom fighters. Okay. They are there to build a brand, and that is what they're doing. And I've said it, and they don't, you can tell I will say I feel right about it because they don't comment back. Right. So
I think there's some truth on that on both sides, because I think Boast was playing to a crowd. Like, I don't think it was, I mean, I think it was done intentionally. Yeah. I think it was done intentionally. I just don't think he realized, I don't think they didn't do enough MDMP or whatever. They didn't see how, because to us, that are in this kind of space, it was like obvious how that was going to play out. Like, what were you thinking? If your intent,
like, you just did them a massive favor.
Yeah. If your intent was to actually get the bill passed, you know what I mean? Like, which I believe it's not. I think this is, I mean, me and you've talked about this offline. I think this is all smoke and mirrors bullshit. But then yeah, that probably wasn't the smartest route to go. Right. And so so now, the official position of the VFW, which to be honest is a compromise, right, is the take out Section 108, which they're essentially saying change, like, don't make this a pay for, right? Like, if you don't look at us and don't say you don't actually have the money, you clearly do, or you can go print it, because that's what we do in this country.
Right.
And so they're holding up I won't even say we're holding up, because I know you caught me slipping the other day when I was like, we fought off, but I was talking shit to somebody else. I wasn't actually telling.
I got Facebook got receipts.
I appreciated it. I was like, that's a fair point, because my whole point is like, they don't listen to us anyway. And so, yeah, man, I think, like, what, they're all on recess now, so they're not coming back. When are they getting back in town? Like, they're breaking down now, I think. And so they won't be back.
They won't come back till after the
well, they come back they'll be back at late August. I think they'll hang out, but then they're going to break for the midterms.
Right. And they go
so it's frustrating, man. And I'm super empathetic and sympathetic, because again, me and you both said this, right? Like, it's what I told most of the congressmen, like, dude, I would make money on the TC of A. Like, this is I'm not here to say that I'm not for all these things. I'm here on, and again, a principled stance to me is like, it's an account. Like, I wish everybody would just stop. Like, look, it's an accounting trick. Like, this is an accounting trick. And they didn't come out and say that in the beginning, which they probably would have been better off I think if the messaging had been from the jump that, and the money is going to go back to the Treasury. We're trying to gain the system here, right? XYZ. But that wasn't the whole truth, because they were actually reducing, like, the percentages, not the percentages on the sleep apnea and tinnitus. They were reducing, like, the percentages of, like, your actual retirement pay. There was some other wonky stuff, and it was super complicated. And so they chose the path that they chose to try to get it across the finish line. And I'm telling you, it backfired in some spectacular ways. And then Doug Collins, if you believe that the VA was going to do it, I mean, they're calling for, like, Concerned Veterans of America's calling for Doug Collins' job now, or at least their proxy, like which is interesting to me. and basically saying, because he won't come out and say that the rule change is going to happen. They had somebody leak the morning of there's a fun story that somebody should chase down. Inside the VA, who leaked to boast that the rule change was absolutely happening, because that's what broke on the news and on Twitter, which then they were.
It's on the VA website, so yeah, like it's literally on their website.
Well, no, it's not. No, yeah. It's not on their website that the rule is happening at the fiscal year 26. It's not there.
It said no, not that it is happening, but that is their plan.
The process,
if anything changes,
is going.
Yeah. If anything changes, we were talking about this with Sampson, Dr. Sampson on. I can't stand group thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't stand it. And anytime I start to get pigeonholed into it, or I start seeing the argument go that way, like I just immediately look at, all right, what's their gain here? What is their gain here if they want everybody to agree with them? Right. And I said it right away. I go, VFW saw a way to increase membership, like 100%. And if you watch all the reels after in the last week and a half, they're all about, this is why you should join us. Right. Like, and I'm like, man, hey, I got it. Like, cool. Now you did it. Right. And, but then they try to celebrate like the Texas Legion separating from, the headquarters Legion. Good. Like it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That's their Legion post. They don't have to agree. Right. So I can't stand I stand with this, and like I have to be with this. I can't think any other way. And I will continue to troll people on Section 108, where I say, what benefits did you lose?
Yeah. Which is it goes back. I think that's a fair troll, because it's honestly like on the principal position of that it changes the way Congress does business. Yes. But like it is what's the legalese language they use? Like it is point forward, right? Like if the rule change went through, or if anybody for the VA would actually claim it at this point, right, it's only affecting future veterans. But then I understand the logic behind what you're saying is like, well, they never had it, right? Like if you like it wasn't actually their rating because it's this old one. So it's
that, and if they have service connected sleep apnea, where again, I brought this up with one of the guests we had on the Trash Talk Hour with the book Wounding Warriors, is I've been an advocate and I've been pro bono on the Hill for the last 5 years, looking for things that make active duty people better and veterans better. And that is one of my biases, that I can't listen to somebody when they make veterans look that they need to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's fair, man.
I'm like, what are we doing to fix them? So if I guarantee you right now, if they let's just use PTSD, because it's a blanket term that has 500 different things about it. Let's just say it's one thing, and they found a cure for it tomorrow. Right? Like it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. They're taking that money, bro.
Yeah.
Like they're going to, and as a taxpayer, I should feel good that I paid for the money for the research, for the case studies, for the continual, support of the VA to find that. And when they find it, well, why should I have to pay any more for it? And Buddy has a great point. It's like, and I agree with this, and we were going to talk about it in a couple of weeks on the show, is, there is a cost to war, and you're going to put guys in, you're going to put warriors on a battlefield for 20 straight years. And then for a lot of those years, there was no real reason to be there. And you're just driving around getting blown up.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like that, you got to pay for that.
Yeah.
Like that is 100% a fact. Now, flip side, if I can fix it, if I can treat it, then I would rather my tax dollars, because I do pay taxes. I pay a shit ton of taxes, right? I want my tax dollars to treat and to fix. So with Section 108, with sleep apnea, if you have sleep apnea that is service connected and the treatment does not work, you're still getting rated 60%, which is like, what did you lose? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand what benefits get. Yeah. Like,
this
what
is
yeah.
This is what I wrote the article about, because it really does go to the dysfunction that we have, kind of back to what Dr. Sampson was saying with like the civil military kind of divide. And hopefully Congress takes this part seriously. To me, they're not right. They're indicating that they're not right now. Right. Like, and I'll bring it to current events, like kind of like, because if you take, I mean, yeah, they were just lazy, dude. Like the AUMF and the lack of serious debate about putting, using state sanctioned violence to achieve whatever our strategic goals were. They phoned it in for 20 something years. And so now you got a bunch of assholes like me and you sitting around like pissed off about that, right? And all the tax dollars that we'll never get back from these misadventures. And you would think that a reasonable nation would take a step back and then learn from that. In my opinion,
Right.
Clearly we have not. And so then that's really what made me dive back in. Like, as I was watching this debate unfold, and me and you talked about this before the show, I was like, I don't think this is the debate we should be having, because it's so, like, don't get me wrong, guys, I'm not anti, like, it's pennies on the, to me. And I sat in Pat Harrigan's office, who is game for debate, by the way. That guy will go. Like, I had preconceived notions of what he was going to be like. Absolutely game for debate, which I appreciated. We didn't necessarily agree. And then he kind of, I won't say he slipped up, but he definitely tried to have like this principled conservative conversation. And like, buddy, like, I am your huckleberry, right? And so like we went down that path. And he was talking about the budget, and he was talking about, how this is not sustainable, which I agree with, is all true, right? My brother in Christ, I can look it up. I bet you didn't vote. I'd love to see if you voted for the War Powers Act today. Because if you didn't, you own it, right? Like,
right.
You can't, if you're gonna say, and again, this is the partisan side of me, and part of kind of the war path I'm on, and one of the reasons I wrote that article is like, once I was a centrist for the majority of my life. I was never a big, MAGA guy, just because I thought if y'all want me to be honest, I just thought it was super douchey. And like, whatever. But I do now, like, I have found like an ideological home in principled conservatism. Like, I just have, like, it makes the most sense to me. And I don't mean, and I don't mean that to disparage, but if you actually, when I say that, some of my friends might be like, what the hell? Go read the books. And I think you'll be surprised that you actually agree with a lot of the tenets of what we're talking about, because they absolutely, this is where all the words get confused. It absolutely is liberalism in like the American like sense, right? Not liberal in like how y'all think about it today. Like, liberal ideas is absolutely okay inside of like principled conservatism.
Yeah, the whole liberal progressive movement started in the
like you got it, and
but then it changed. But yeah,
but then, hey guys, you learn this when you go to college and you read books, which I know we're not all about right now. But like, it's kind of, not like all these assholes on Twitter, like, oh, they'll say things like war on the middle class and then say I hate Marxists. Like, guys, guess who gave you the fucking terminology you're using right now? You're using the language of the oppressor. Right. Yep. And you're sitting here calling everybody else Marxist. But like, I digress. But I just think that there's a principle. To me, it is holistic, because and I wrote an article, and I think me and you agree on this, and you've said it before, which is I'll give you the credit for helping me influence on that, is like, we cannot act like we are conservative and then defend crony capitalism. And this bill, while it's got a lot of good in it, is absolutely backed by a whole hell of a lot of crony capitalism. which I wouldn't even if.
Which is called corruption, by the way.
Yeah,
corruption.
Let's call it corruption. Shout out to the Koch family. Shout out to Concerned Vets of America, guys. Like, you're not conservatives. You're not, right? This is and I'm trying to reclaim that terrain, and I don't. Obviously, I have like a decent sized role inside the VFW. I am advocating for a change in our messaging of like there's a principled stance where we don't need to be arguing about two specific ratings because the debate's bigger than that to me.
Right.
And so
let me go on with what you're saying, because I've argued this for years, and I even get into like family fights about it when I'm talking to my super conservative family members, where I was like, I'm like, you got to understand how the swamp works. And right now you have a consolidated appropriations bill got passed in February. All right. 90% of America doesn't know what that means. I didn't know what that meant 20 years ago. No chance. Right.
No.
But it's where you don't have a majority in the Senate to get something passed. All right. You need 60 votes. No party has that right now. Right. So you do these consolidated bills where everybody just gets to throw shit in there.
Yeah. Becomes a suicide pact.
Yeah. And that's all that happens. And so that's what go back before I started arguing about a couple of sections of the bill. I go, if the VFW was serious, what's your fix? And that's what you kind of went on to. I'm like, not just going to say take it out, because that's intellectually dishonest with the way the government is set up right now. If there was a majority, then that would be a good argument. If you had a 60-40 majority in the Senate, you could say that. You could be like, no, you could take this out. But you can't right now. So
like we had to that point, I was sitting in I don't want to name drop. I'll tell you what office I was. I won't name the staffer. I was in Virginia Fox's office, and I kind of went at this guy because we've had a couple different conversations, especially about Veterans Guardian. And like they haven't moved the needle at all, which I get, right? Like I honestly understand. But I was a little bit more aggressive with this particular staffer than I was with some of the others. And I was like, he asked me the same question, then what's the fix? And I was like, tell her to sign the discharge petition. And he looked at me and said, this is a quote, the discharge petition is a tool of the minority. To which my response was, and it seems like the omnibus bill is the tool of the majority. Yeah. And I was like,
that's the only way they get it through. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, to counter that, I guess. And they had like the VFW people that were with me had to kind of be like, hey, and we love her. And because I was like, dude, don't sell me this. There's no, and I understand what you're saying, because you're talking about with the realities of what's actually happening in that building, right? They know it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
Right. There's not dude, it's like the Richard Starr Act's like the most co-sponsored bipartisan bill ever. Like it might be, there might be one or two, but it's up there, dude. It's in the top 98% of bills it's been, and they all know it, but they don't want the other side to get the win, right? The other side can't get the win. This is okay, fine. I got that. And then some backdoor conversations happen. Blumenthal, we try to put in the NDAA. There are fixes, legit. I guess this is what I'm saying. If you're telling me that taking it out is not a legitimate fix, right? Then my response is then why are none of the three options? Why was not McGovern actually put it up as in the rules committee to say, well, we're setting aside all it was because they did the farmers bill and they also did everything. Like none of these have pay-fors. None of them do. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So why isn't that enough?
Because it'll go to the Senate and the Senate will send it back with what they want. So if
it's like the dysfunction.
You throw these big bills in where everybody gets their pork. Like there's three VAs. There's three VAs that are going to get $20 million in two different states. Yeah. So that senator's going to vote for it. It's wild to me. And that's why I always talked about this. And I always say this, I go, you could have Stalin's nephew come into America, or Stalin's great grandchild, and say, I'm going to try 13 things. I'm going to keep whatever's good, and we're going to kick out whatever's bad. you know, but it's just that's too simple. Not going to happen. But yeah, it really doesn't bother me what's going on, and you know this. I have fun with it, even though I would benefit from a quick pass too, just like you would. But I don't. Doesn't matter. Like me personally, I want veterans to be empowered and to go kick ass.
Yeah.
So if you're waiting for an extra $2,000 a month, I'm telling you, you can go make that right now.
Yeah.
You can start a
I think that's
podcast.
Yeah, and I think the community, hopefully, yeah, man, hopefully the vet community, while there's a lot of money to be made in brand building and Lord knows, like the Twitter guys are making tons of money from fanning these flames. Like I'll call him out just because it was a dick move, man. Like there's the Veteran Justice Alliance guys who were aligned.
Yeah.
This is where it gets weird. He's aligned with David Starr, right? Like the brother of Richard Starr. And there's that one guy that we've been offering. I forget what the dude with the mullet that we were like, come on the show,
the
man.
the berserker medic or whatever.
Yeah. Like this guy, sir, you've made fun of my family, you've made fun of my daughters, you've made fun of everything, and then you put a passive aggressive threat to me, and I'm like, I'm your huckleberry, whatever, and then I get banned for Twitter for like 12 hours, and so major VGA reaches out to me. Right. And they're like, hey, man, we don't condone any of that. XYZ. Right. Blah, blah, blah. He's a good dude. I'm like, well, all evidence to the contrary, but whatever. Cause I make fun of people all the time and I don't talk about their kids and shit, but fine. Cool, man. Do you? And then I said, and so I thought I was having like a conversation with at least the reasonable person. Right. And this is under their official account, y'all. And he goes, I was like, yeah, man, like I get it. Like I'm aligned with the VFW, but that doesn't mean we got to do all this. Right. And the first words out of his mouth were like, man, fuck the VFW. And then like he just like blocked me. So it's like I thought we were like, there's no need for all that, y'all. Like, you should be able to have a conversation without it becoming all this ridiculousness. And I will leave it at that. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll probably start doing these a little bit. This one even went a little bit longer, but like the goal is we'll come back every 2 weeks and we'll have a good guest on for y'all and we'll talk about something, hopefully under this model. But I appreciate everybody that tuned in. And I'll get this thing chopped up and y'all can watch the review, man. But hey, man, y'all pray for our service members downrange, y'all.
Absolutely.
Shit's going to get spicy. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, all right, y'all be good, Nick. I'm good, man. Y'all.
All right, guys. We'll see you. We'll see y'all in a little bit. Fight Joe's, and then the Trash Talk Hour starts up in 2 weeks for our sixth season. I think we're going to call it like season 4 because we didn't start counting it as seasons. But yeah, it'll start getting kicked off. We're gonna have a good time. So all right, we'll see you guys later.
All right, airborne.